All right. Welcome, friends. It's Jen with the Bold Thing, and we are coming to you with another episode of Living a Bold Life. We are actually on episode 10. It feels like a lot longer. I can't believe it's only episode 10. And tonight, we are here to talk about Shannon Torello's Bold Life. How are you, Shannon?
I'm good.
So grateful that you're with us. Well, we're recording on the evening, but who knows what time of day it is for all of our watchers, listeners. Um, I am going to give you a quick intro so people know who you are, and then we're going to get started.
Okay.
All right. So as I mentioned you all, this is Shannon Torello, and Shannon is a sensitive soul, deep thoughts and big feelings, currently living in Wilmington, NC, with her sweet husband and two kitties. Shannon works in clinical research, a field she spent most of her professional life in, except for that one time she left to go to nursing school, then work as an L&D nurse and in an OBGYN office. Transformation has taken her on a wild ride. It tends to do that the past few years, especially so in this year. She's a work in progress, learning how to grow with it, or to go with it and grow with it. My eyes clearly are not working tonight. She is a recovering perfectionist and people pleaser, learning how to love herself and understand that she is enough. She is an evolving seeker of wisdom, authenticity, joy, and peace. And she's learning to live with a tender heart in a harsh world. And realizing that isn't a weakness like once thought. That's actually where her power comes from. I love that. She loves a good laugh, a good cry, and firmly believes that kindness and vulnerability will change the world. That is so beautiful, Shannon. And may I share who you are to me?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's been fun with my guests because some of the guests on here I've known for like 20 years, and then some. I'm like, oh, it's time to find a new guest this week. And I get on a call with a random person. I'm like, yeah, great, be my guest. So it's kind of fun and all over. But I actually met Shannon kind of almost right at the beginning of COVID. And interestingly enough, that's when a lot of people were not meeting new people.
Right.
But literally, Shannon started off as one of my yoga students. And literally, as soon as she got her membership here in Charlotte, North Carolina at Okra Yoga, we shut our doors and we moved everything online. And so Shannon and I have actually gotten to know each other quite well virtually. We've actually only met in person a few times.
Yeah.
And throughout this, Shannon and I, we just keep finding more ways to connect, more ways to be in partnership. And just like you are really evolving and whatnot, I feel like our journeys are evolving together.
Yeah.
So Shannon is actually a COVID gift for me. And I think it's important that we find those because, a lot of stuff's been taken this year. So thank you for being something that was given to me this year.
I echo that. I was thinking about that last night, and I really believe that, given how we met, we were supposed to cross paths. It wasn't definitely not a coincidence. So, and the way we keep getting to connect with each other on such healing ways is just really spectacular.
Oh, yes. I love that.
Yeah.
So if any of you are newer to the series, this is an interview series that I started doing not that long ago. And the reason is, as a coach, a yoga teacher, someone who's really into transformation, I think that sometimes people looking from the outside in don't really get all that goes into living a bold life. And why the series is about living a bold life is, for most of us, when we do this stretchy thing, we learn oh, I can do this again. The hardest thing was just out of the way. And so for many of us, it becomes a lifestyle and it becomes a practice, but it's not always easy. it's not always fun. There's things that go on off the highlight reel. And so the series is just to give people that are in my life, whether it's for a season, for a lifetime, a chance to share a snippet of their journey. And so I never know what my listeners are going to share. So I am always really excited to hear. And, you know, we could do this again in a week and you might share something completely different. And that's why this is fun.
Right.
So Shannon, for you, in this moment, if you were to share one of the boldest moves you've made, one of the boldest, most courageous things you've done, in this moment, what feels like the thing that you really want to share and put out into the world?
So I feel like I could give lots of answers to this.
I feel like you could too.
This is a really hard question for me. But I think what I want to go with is learning how to show up to life every day as Shannon and actually like following through on that. And that might sound a little too abstract for some people. But I feel like I used to kind of just walk through life, and I still do a lot of times. I'm not trying to indicate that I'm completely changed. I lived my life as the version of me that I thought other people wanted me to be. So whether that be coming from a place of religion or family tradition or unspoken rules or just, you know, the status quo, this is the way it's always done. I never really paid attention to who Shannon is and what I want to do and how I want to live my life and what brings me joy. So learning how to stop and show up as myself, and then like you do it little by little. You do it like just a little bit at a time, and before you know it, you're paying more attention and you're realizing I don't have to say yes to this if I don't want to do it. I don't have to stay in this job if I know it's not right. I don't have to continue with this relationship if it's sucking the life out of me. You know, you have a say in your life. And I think that shaking off everybody else's expectations and listening to myself has been the boldest thing that I've done.
I love that. Whatever you shared, I would have loved, but you can see me messing with my earbuds the whole time. AirPods are not one size fits all, but I digress. I love that you shared that, because I feel like more than half of our guests have shared an actual event. Mm-hmm. And then we've had a handful who shared things like you. And I love it because it lets people see that maybe it's not like, I started a business, I left a relationship, you know, and the bold stuff often is this kind of stuff. Because what I really heard and what you shared was showing up as Shannon and following through. It sounds like from there, the rest of the bold things are going to happen more easily.
Right. And I think that like a lot of times we get stuck on like, what's the thing? What's the thing that proves that I'm bold? What's the thing that proves whatever you're seeking? And, you know, it's really freeing to realize like you have it inside of you.
Yeah. And I know people listening are going to get this. Either they're in the experience now or they've worked through the experience themselves. Because a lot of us have been wired through our experiences to want to be people pleasers, to feel like it's safer to do what we think we should. And this breakthrough you've had and will continue to have, that's where the more challenging work tends to be. I know for me it has been. I'm also a recovering perfectionist and, you know, whatnot. So I get from my own experience some of what you're sharing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And through the rest of the questions, we're going to get to paint the picture a little bit more. So people will kind of keep getting it if there is any vagueness left, but I don't think there is.
Right.
I think it's pretty clear.
Okay.
So, and again, just kind of roll with the questions, right? Like, because you may have like an answer that's right there, or you may not. But for many of us, when push comes to shove, there's something that got us to do it. And while yours wasn't necessarily an event, showing up as Shannon, following through, is there a time, or is there anything you remember where you were like, I am done, I'm gonna be myself? Mm-hmm. Like what was it for you that you feel called to share tonight?
Yeah. So I can look back on my journey over the past couple of years and see how it was all kind of building. But it really, things kind of just like exploded probably at the beginning of this year. And I was in a job that I was really, really, like, I wanted it to work really badly. And I was in a place where it just wasn't working for me. It wasn't the right fit. Part of my intro said I went to nursing school and became a nurse for a little while, and I thought that was what I was supposed to be doing. I had this conviction for over a decade that I was supposed to be a nurse, and I finally got to a place where I could pursue it, and I did it, and I accomplished that goal spectacularly. But it really brought out some very unhealthy things in my, like, perfectionist, people pleasing. It really, like, all those things really reared their ugly head during that time. And I think what was happening was like, over my whole life, I've been taught, and then I've been conditioned, it's been reinforced that you want to please others, you want to do good things, for others, and it feels good to get that approval back. And so people would tell me, oh, you would make a great nurse, and I felt like that was just like further confirmation that that's what I was supposed to be doing. And so I did that, and labor and delivery was my dream job, and I went into it, and there were so many amazing things about that job. This is still kind of difficult for me to talk about, not in the sense that I don't want to share it. I'm still emotionally tied to this.
Yeah, I get it.
But so I did that for a little while, probably about a year and a half, and there were many amazing things about it, but something happened. It triggered like a very insecure part of my brain where I just basically like broke myself down. I just like beat myself down into like a bloody pulp of telling myself I wasn't good enough. I wasn't a good nurse. I wasn't, I don't know. I just continued to just hurt myself over and over again every single day. And I was in this endless cycle of dread and then relief. I would dread every single shift I had. And then after it was over, I would, so it was just like a constant, just like roller coaster. And so I tried to make that work for a while, and it was clear to me at a certain point that it wasn't working, and I needed to leave. And that was devastating in itself, because it was something that I had worked really hard for, something that I thought was my passion. I thought it was me. My identity became a nurse, and to have to be able to separate that and realize like it's actually not my identity was it was more difficult than I ever could have imagined. And so my husband, and like he's been a fantastic supporter of everything I've gone through, but we both realized that I needed to get out of there. And so I left and I tried nursing in a different way. In an OBGYN office instead of inpatient. And I wanted it to work so badly too. And it just didn't. It just didn't. And I can't say anything bad about anybody I worked with, the organization. It just wasn't the right place for me. And I was trying so hard to make it work. And I realize now, looking back on it, that I was doing it for all the wrong reasons. Again, I think that part of me thought I needed to do something very altruistic and admirable. Like that part of my brain or my ego or whatever needed that, needed to be liked and approved. So I was in this job working at the office, and I just kept getting worse and worse. I kept feeling worse and worse, and I knew it wasn't right. But I still felt really loyal to my employers and the people I worked with. I wanted to do a good job, but so it was I kept giving and giving and giving, but I had nothing left to give. And I had become this really just miserable human. I was angry all the time. I just felt like I had rage, like seeping under the surface of my skin, and it was leaking out of my pores. And I struggled to find any joy. I wasn't taking care of myself. I was arguing with my husband. It was a really bad place. And we actually were on vacation. We went to Tokyo for a week and a half, and I couldn't even enjoy that. And that was really, something that we'd been looking forward to for a long time. And the fact that I couldn't even relax and enjoy that, it caused us to have a serious heart to heart. And then when we got back, then I knew at that point that it was time to really seek help. And I did. Luckily, one of the doctors that I worked with referred me to a therapist. And honestly, that was the turning point. That's what helped me break out of my toxic mindset and those negative thought patterns, helping break out of that. I ended up leaving my job to take some time off and heal. And earlier this year, I just really feel like I hit rock bottom, and it's something had to change.
Well, that's what I was going to say. It sounds like, in listening to you share your story, and thank you. It's such a gift. You are not the first person to share something that they're still in process with, or maybe that you haven't shared publicly before. So it's such a gift of the series to get that from you. So thank you. Mm-hmm. But what I'm really hearing from you is you just started getting the unworkability of it. It was impacting every area of your life.
Yeah. It was unsustainable.
Yeah. I still want to give you acknowledgement for making the move, because I know in your mind, you're probably oh, there's no other way this could have gone. I had to quit and I had to seek support. Mm-hmm. What I will tell you is I've watched people close to me. We won't name names. They're older now, but I've watched people close to me just grin and bear it till retirement.
Right.
And this is why in this culture, I think so many people, we have a young retirement, because it's people who hate what they're doing and they're trying to get away. So I really want to point that out, because it didn't have to change, even though it got that horrible. I'm a firm believer, when I look around at all the people out there who are raging, mm-hmm. that if they would just be willing to change part of their life, it wouldn't be so bad. Because I've been there before.
I totally agree.
But what I love about what you share, and if anyone listening is in the space, oftentimes going through what Shannon went through and hitting rock bottom is better than things being okay. Why? Because when things are okay, but they're not great, we're not going to do anything usually because they're okay. Right. And it's kind of like when you jump into like a pool or something, if your feet can hit the bottom, you spring back up. And if you're in the middle end, you're just kind of waiting and waiting. So I think for most people who get on a fast track of transformation and start living a bold life, it's because they hit rock bottom.
Yeah.
And if they wouldn't have, it would have been just okay. And they would have stayed.
Right. I mean, I'm a very, like, typically I am of the mindset, or I used to be like, well, it's not that bad. You can keep going. You can grin and bear it, you know, and took a very kind of passive approach to life. And it's kind of like I learned, well, if you don't do anything, eventually something's going to work out. And that is your decision. That's the decision that you made. Yeah. And so, I mean, this is a radical shift from that. But I agree. I mean, it really did open my eyes to, you don't have to be miserable. And so, especially when it comes to work, and work is such a huge part of your life. Like, you spend so much of your time there. Yeah, I mean, you don't have to stay in a job just because they gave you the job.
It kind of, what you're saying reminds me of, you know, a phrase we use a lot in coaching. If you don't create your life, it will get created for you.
Yeah.
You know, inevitably it will, right? And then we look and we're like, how did I wind up here?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So anyone listening, if you're in rock bottom, consider that maybe in some weird way, it may be a gift and it may be the catalyst. You know, and if you notice that you're having the experience of kind of like, everything's okay, I don't really need to do anything, at one point it might not be okay. Right. So just notice that's kind of a form of settling, right? Like, it's okay. Is it really okay? Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. That's really powerful.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And for this question, again, kind of just roll with whatever feels true for you. Okay. The question is, what is your formula for living a bold life and continuing to make bold moves? And where that kind of comes from is a lot of people will notice, oh gosh, for me to keep like facing my fears, I know if I don't do X, Y, and Z, it's not going to happen. And you know, some people, it changes. So just, again, whatever is organic and authentic in this moment. Like, are there any non-negotiables that you're present to that really keep you on this path that you're on?
Okay, so I think measuring everything through the lens of, like, do I feel guilty or shame about this? Like, so that might sound weird, but let me explain.
No, yeah.
Especially when it comes to, I mean, this is still like along the lines of like living your life for you and not others' expectations. So, I mean, honestly, that's how I get to keep showing up and being bold, is to make my decisions for me. And if it brings me joy, if it brings me peace, it brings me rest. You know, sometimes there are things that you have to do, like family obligations, whatever. But just like looking at something through a lens of, okay, well, how is this making me feel? If somebody asks me to do something, how does it make me feel? If someone is trying to rush me, how does that make me feel? If, like, whatever is coming, like, you're approached with, just really like paying attention to how it makes you feel. And if it's making you feel anxious, then explore it. I think I think that's a good point to make too, is not hiding or running away from your feelings.
Oh, yes.
So if you're feeling something in your gut, if you're feeling sad, if you're feeling happy, like whatever, I used to always avoid it as well because it doesn't feel good. And so you try to fill up that space with other things to distract you from it or keep busy or whatever. Learning to just pay attention to how you're feeling and acknowledge it and see what it's trying to show you, I think has been something really big for me that I'm finding I'm actually doing it more and more without having to think about it. So yeah, so that's kind of nice.
Well, I hear two things in what you just shared. And one is you're clear in the experience that you want to be having.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're running everything through the filter of, is it going to bring me that peace? Is it going to bring me that joy? And if it is, and I love how you said, like some of the stuff doesn't, right? Like maybe we don't want to load the dishwasher, but like ultimately, like that's not what we're talking about, right?
Yeah,
like we're talking about the bigger stuff. And I love that you also shared that part of what keeps you doing that is not hiding or running from your feelings, because it's really challenging to make choices that are in alignment if we don't explore the underbelly and keep exploring the underbelly, because then all of a sudden we've been emotionally hijacked. Mm-hmm. And it's like, what's going on? Where are we? Is this real? Is that real? What the heck is even happening right now?
Yes.
And so it sounds like you've gotten to be in a space where that while feelings don't always feel good, mm-hmm. ultimately they can't hurt you and you're still safe.
Right.
And you can lean in and you can explore them and kind of know what I kind of refer to feelings as like a barometric pressure system almost of a human.
Right.
It's such an important message, because I think a lot of us haven't been taught. So you all, like, I also want to share, what Shannon and I are talking about. Shannon mentioned she sought out therapy. I will say I never learned how to lean into my feelings either. And it took professional help through coaching, through therapy, through healers, to be able to lean into the feelings with them and explore them with them, because we haven't, a lot of people, especially, people who aren't in high school, they're getting more emotional intelligence than we got. But, a lot of us, the older you get, we weren't given these tools.
Right.
So anyone listening, if this is hard for you, it was for us too.
Very much.
And this is where some support, at least in the beginning, can help. Just so you've got someone holding your hand and you're safe. And then you're going to start to befriend those feelings and be like, wow, it's strangely delightful in here.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, I even got to the point where I would just have like these, I always describe them as just like feeling gross. Like, I don't know what it was, if it was a combination of just like emotional exhaustion, anxiety, like all the bad stuff like mixed together, just like pervasively lingering. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't even get to like pinpoint what it was. It was just like always there. And so to be able to step back and say, well, right now I'm feeling whatever.
Yeah.
It's
it's in your space.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, when we look around I'm looking around my office right now, like, oh, there's a lamp, there's plants. It's kind of like a lot of us haven't learned how to do that with, like, if I look around and here, what do I see? Right. And I'm a big believer in naming emotions, mm-hmm. not to make them more real, but to say, oh, this is where I'm at. So how do I work with this? Like, it's a way to just get more clarity to understand how to work with it.
Right. And it kind of helps you see that it's not bad. It's
Yeah.
not, like, yeah, they're scary, they don't feel good sometimes, but it's not bad. And once you can acknowledge it, it helps it so that, like, if you just keep shoving it down, it's gonna bubble back up at some
Yeah.
point,
Yeah.
and it's gonna be a lot less fun to deal with it then.
That
But
we can guarantee.
yes, and even like being able to acknowledge it helps you, I feel like, be able to see that you can be two things at one time, like, or more than two. Like sometimes, you can be like, I'm feeling really sad, I'm thinking about somebody I lost, and I'm feeling grief, but I also feel like an immense amount of love and joy that I had this person in my life and they meant so much to me. And just like realizing, like, you don't have to be either or, there can be a lot of things going
Yes.
on.
That's really beautiful. And you all, what Shannon is explaining, at least the way we describe it in coaching lingo, is we can expand our bandwidth to be with all of it. And there's nothing wrong if you find yourself constantly in that I'm this or I'm that. It's just a sign that you have not expanded what you can emotionally be with at one time. And when we can expand how much we can hold at one time, life is just more rich on every level.
Yeah.
So I love that you shared that.
And I will also say that it's not an everyday thing, because there's some days I can't even tolerate,
Yeah. And I, you know what? I will chime in there with you. I've been doing transformational work deeply for 8 years, maybe more. And some days I have a moment where I'm like, who am I right now? Oh my
right.
dear, is this how I used to live my life? And, for me, it's like a moment of gratitude, like, whoa, I used to live here always. And then I feel so much sorrow for the suffering I used to put myself through.
Yeah.
And I mean the word on purpose. Like, I think the way you explained where you were at, it was almost, a sense of suffering.
Oh, I 100% would describe it as that. And it does make me really sad to look back at that Shannon and think that she hurt so badly. And
Is it really cool though to be like, but I don't live life from there anymore, and I'm continuing to keep expanding, because you are. And and that's what we're really talking about when we're talking about living a bold life. It's not necessarily being this flashy star. It's just saying, hey, I'm committed to growth because I get to keep expanding. It's not to fix. It's not because you're not amazing how you are. It's just because you get to keep having a more amazing experience.
right. I mean, honestly, what it boils down to is growth is bold. Like,
Yes.
participating
Fire.
like being a part of your growth, like participating in it, is bold.
Yeah, that's why I'm just the same as the bold thing.
Yeah.
When I started off as a coach, they were like, what would the bold thing say? What would the bold thing do? And I was like, why did I get this name? No one will get off my back. And like, I got harassed all the time to be bolder. And because it's true. And that's why I named it that. I was like, anyone who works with me, like, let's just call it what it is. This work is the bold thing.
Well, I mean, and I will say, as someone who has never, ever, ever considered themselves bold, to have power, to be a leader in any sense, I feel like I can say those things about myself now, and I never would have. But honestly, embracing growth is very bold, because it's scary and it's hard. And I think as a whole, we fear it. We fear change, we fear growth, but really good things can come from it.
And speaking of really good things, this next question, of course, we never know the answer to. We're not psychics here, but we can have some kind of an idea. So for Shannon, if you kind of just, rewind, not fast forward back, rewind back to when you weren't living life for you. You were feeling very stuck in what had at one point been your dreams, and then you realized they weren't. Drop my pen here. But, ultimately you could have made the choice to stay on that trajectory, or you could have made the choice to shift, and you chose to shift. And everyone listening, like, I want to be clear, there's never any judgment about your choices. If you stay where you're at, that's your process. That's okay.
Yep.
What I really just always want to paint is, when we're at a crossroads, there's an impact when we stay, and there's an impact when we shift. And ultimately, it's, am I willing to be with the impact of where I am, right? So for you, if you imagine not making the bold move of showing up as Shannon and continuing to follow through, where do you think you might be right now? Just if you were to take a wild guess based on how that trajectory was going.
I mean, so much of where I'm at right now started with the shift. So, I mean, my gut is to say I would still probably be in a job that I wasn't working for me. Not that it's not a great job. It just wasn't,
it wasn't for you.
For me. I didn't enjoy it. So I probably still would have been in this job. I would have been probably needing to seek anger management help. And I truly mean that. I'm not just trying to be funny. I don't think my relationship with my husband would be in a really good place. I don't know. I don't know how low I would have gotten, because I'm just thinking right now about the way I felt. Most of it was stuff that I heaped on myself, like guilt, shame, just the harshest judgment you could ever imagine. Just basically, like, I treated myself like I hated myself. I cannot really say where, like, I would have been. I can tell you my emotional and mental state would be very bad, but I don't know what that would have done, like how that would have affected my life, other than it definitely would have impacted my relationships and my job.
Well, and what I'm hearing is you would have stayed stuck, most likely.
Yes.
And stuckness creates anger for a lot of us. And it's so interesting, you know, that I didn't meet you during that. I met you when you were already doing stuff. So I've gotten to meet you with some of that stuff down, and you've got the biggest heart ever. So it's hard to even imagine you honestly that angry. And what I also hear is your relationships would have suffered. Who knows where you and your husband would be, but ultimately the one that I was really present to was the relationship with you. And if anyone knows what that feels like to not be in relationship with yourself, it's the worst feeling ever, because you literally live with yourself. You know, you can't get out of your own head. You can't get out of your body. You know, this is the one. So, you know, and then if we just paint the picture, you know, obviously we don't know, but if you stayed stuck and you kept getting angry and the relationship suffered, we know you weren't going anywhere good, right? Yeah. Most likely that would have led, you know, I love how they say, you know, dis-ease leads to disease. So, you know, that's where people get sick, stressed, all of it.
I can't even imagine what could have turned it around. You know, like I feel like if it got to a certain point, it almost feels like there was like a point of no return.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. So, you know, everyone, like really, I want you to get, you know, this woman, and it wasn't even that long ago, was stuck. She was angry and her relationships were suffering. And I never want to say you're a different person, because what I know is you're more.
I am a different person.
You know, you're more you. You have moved that stuff that's in the way of you out of the way.
Yeah.
And so anyone, you know, it can happen quicker than you think. But, you know, I really love what you shared, because I think a lot of people are still so wrapped up in the story that they're strong and powerful if they're doing it alone.
Yeah.
I used to be in that story, and what I can tell you is, when I did everything alone, that was actually the weakest moment of my life. The more powerful I am, the more I'm like, I have a big old team that keeps getting bigger.
Yeah. Yes.
And so Shannon, you may have already kind of spoken to this, but you've already given, and this is what I love. Everyone I've had on this series is such givers, as if you haven't already given enough wisdom and advice. But if in this moment, if you were just to leave the listeners with one piece of sage wisdom to living a bold life, and you've already given a ton, so maybe you want to say something you already said again. Yeah. Maybe you want to like drop a little bomb in here that you haven't said yet. But for you, if you had to pick one thing in this moment, what would that be?
I think I'm going to go back to the growth is bold thing. Let the growth happen. Just let it happen. I had to. I don't know if I can show my tattoo. Is it?
I can see it. Yeah, it looks like a little house.
It's my little happy house with flowers and vines in it, and it represents where I live now, because I did live in a really dark, ugly, scary place, and now I live in a much different place. And yeah, I think there were other things I wanted to say for this answer, but in the course of this conversation, I think that don't be afraid of growth. Embrace it.
Yeah. And I second that, y'all, because what we know to be true is what we resist persists. So if you're resisting versus allowing, it will not shift. Allowing is one of those things where it's way easier said than done for some of us. So again, remember that for Shannon, what got her on this trajectory was seeking support and help. And I can vulnerably share and say, if I haven't too, that's true for me. I remember when I joined my coaching leadership program and my little sister came and observed, and she got to share her experience. And she said, I'm just glad my sister's in this program because I've never seen her so happy. And people would never recognize me. And I tried for a long, long, long time to do it by myself. Yeah. And it didn't work. And it just took me a long time to admit that it wasn't working. Right. So no shame. You've got two people committed to living a bold life telling you, get help. Don't do it alone.
Get help.
Get help. Shannon, it was such a gift to be with you. I'm so honored to have you here to get to share with the people in my network, and they'll share with whoever it needs to. And thank you for putting really important stuff out into the world, because again, I think people, they see our end result, because usually when we're in the muck, we don't want to share and we hide. Right. So they're like, where is this person? Oh gosh, look at this bright shining star. Right. And they don't realize what it took to shine and what it takes to keep shining.
I am a star, but you don't look what I went through to get here.
Exactly. And so I so appreciate you being willing to be authentic and be vulnerable, because part of what is, and I love what you said, you firmly believe that kindness and vulnerability will change the world. So you being here is part of shifting the world.
Yes, 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 yes.
And I will say bye to you properly after I let the guests go. Thank you to each of you for watching. Please share with anyone who could use some encouragement, some inspiration, some normalizing that, lotuses grow from mud, right? Like it's normal to be in the muck and then grow. And so much love to each of you.